Welcome to Show Me the Money podcast that's more bend and snap than banking app. I'm Ellie.
And I'm Claire, and each week we discuss how money shows up in some of our favourite pop culture, from the classic to the nostalgic to the contemporary. We're on a bit of a nostalgia run at the moment, aren't we?
Yeah.
Because today we're talking about Legally Blonde, basically because we want to.
Yeah.
There's like hardly any. I quite often try and listen to like other podcasts for research for this one. But like I couldn't find anyone out there giving any hot takes on Legally Blonde. I think we need some sort of revival in the zeitgeist.
I'm quite surprised by that, actually.
Yeah, we just really wanted to talk about it. It's such an iconic film. It's one of those like it has some moments that just absolutely stay with you. But also it's kind of a real film about like how success can look different. Like that's the essence of the film, isn't it? It's about like sort of following your own path and not compromising, and the fact that you can still be successful in spite of that. And so, yeah, I've got loads of like really interesting things I want to talk through with you. But shall we start with a bit of a plot summary?
Yes, absolutely. So ultimately, it starts off with us meeting Elle Woods, who is our lead character. She's wealthy, which is something we'll talk about a bit more. But she's super feminine as well. She's very girly. She's a UCLA sorority girl, and she's been with her boyfriend Warner for a while. She's expecting him to propose, but actually what happens is we see that he dumps her because he decides that he wants to go to Harvard to study law and marry a serious woman. So from the start, we're kind of being told Elle Woods is not a serious woman. But she takes this very seriously and decides to go and kind of get him back by getting into Harvard law herself, which she does. But then initially she's obviously doing it for him. But then once she's there, she realizes that she's basically being underestimated because of how she looks a lot of the time, because she's so feminine and girly and loves pink. And she's dismissed quite quickly by classmates, by professors, for being silly and being a bit of an airhead. And actually what she does is prove them wrong a lot of the time. And we see her intern on a murder trial where she turns out to pick up a key detail, which gets missed by a lot of people, which is about perm. And actually, when she kind of goes through that process, she then chooses herself ultimately, rather than her boyfriend, who's then realised actually like she's very clever.
Yeah, there's obviously like the moment after she has kind of cracked the case, which is so like, it's such like a movie thing. Like, why is an intern questioning like what they're just deciding on the day? But it's such like an iconic scene when she's grilling Linda Cardellini, who of course went on to be like Velma in Scooby-Doo, like also in my favourite Mad Men. But she's like grilling her on the timelines, and she discovers that earlier in the day she got a perm. She's got this like big permed hair, and she's like, oh, hold on a second, but you said you got in the shower. And this is something that I know as well, just from getting my lashes done, is that you cannot
go
get
in
them
steam.
wet.
Yeah,
I like to think that I also could have cracked this case, but she basically kind of gets it out of her that she was lying about being in the shower and not hearing the gunshot, and that makes the whole case fall apart, and they are able to like get their client off. She has this big success moment, and obviously like the old horrible boyfriend comes running back, and she's like, no thank you sir, I will go out with Luke Wilson instead. It is like a rom-com in some ways, but the romance is very like by the by. It's very much like a film about her getting what she wants without compromising who she is, basically.
And it's kind of, I guess, almost like a like choosing herself, like ultimately over like the love interest that she starts off with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose like our first theme that we wanted to talk about, and this is something I'm really interested to talk about because in some ways like it has applied to me. I like feel it quite acutely, but it's the thing about like, why do people undervalue like very feminine women sometimes, and this thing about the cute tax. So it's the cute tax that I'm talking about with regard to me, because I'm like not very tall. I've got quite like a girly voice. Like and I also have a lot of tall friends who sort of like pat me on the head and they're like, "Oh, you look so cute today." But I sometimes wonder, and as a tallie, you can tell me if you've ever felt like this, but I sometimes feel like people do like underestimate me a little bit because of my height, and I don't like really wear high heels. And I think that a lot, in fact, we see like time and time again in the film that people underestimate Elle because she's very cutesy, she's very feminine, she's in like always in bright pink, she's always got like a fluffy pen, she's got like her little dog that she takes everywhere with her bruiser, she speaks like really sort of in this real like sorority girl way, and she's got that like real California English like twang or like syntax that people can find quite irritating maybe. But she is like I would say like hyper feminine.
Yes.
And it causes her to keep being underestimated. Like she's described as like an airhead. Like I think there's that scene right at the start where the sales assistant tries to sell her something that's on sale for full price or for like much more expensive, and she's like, "Oh, there's nothing I love more than like an airhead with daddy's plastic," and goes over to her and says like, "Oh, you might like this one, it's new in," and she like is wide-eyed like asking questions, being like, "Is it low viscosity rayon with the half loop top stitching on the hem?" Like you can tell I've watched this film a lot of times, even though I'm butchering this. She's like, "Oh yeah, yeah," and then she's like, "You can't use that stitch on that fabric because it would snag. And I saw this on sale last year." Like she, all of a sudden she just snaps, and you see how smart she is. And I think like being underestimated is quite a superpower for her throughout the film. But
definitely. Sorry, I was just gonna say, it feels like that it's been so deliberately set up as well. Like, so they've made the character of Elle Woods so kind of stereotypically feminine that however much we as viewers don't like to think of ourselves as having these biases, that we also kind of fall for it when we're watching it. Like it's quite hard to, for the first time, to watch it and not think like, oh yeah, maybe she's a bit ditzy, because it's playing into those stereotypes. And then it makes us, I guess, challenge that ourselves.
Yeah, and I think the film, another thing that the film does a really good job of is that we see that she is obviously like from a wealthy background. She's moving in these circles where she is expecting that she's going to marry like, what is his name? Warner Huntington the third. You know, it's that like, the American kind of real like rich establishment families. But the film does a really good job of like making her the underdog, even though she comes from this insane privilege, but B, like showing us that there are some things that maybe like that privilege and having that money behind you can't necessarily buy for you, which is like, maybe she gets access to the spaces, but
she doesn't get respect.
Doesn't get the respect straight away. And she, that's something that she kind of has to earn in her own right.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really interesting point, because I mean, we've talked before about like schooling and like private schools, and I think that's something that again could quite often happen. Like I've seen this happen, and I've talked about it with my husband as well. Like we both went to private schools for various like periods of our secondary school, and you can see how it can buy access, obviously, but it doesn't mean that you're going to do well. And I used to think a lot of the time, like, are there some of these parents like not quite frustrated because like you're paying a lot of money for your kids to go to school, and the kids just like aren't switched on, like they just don't care. Like you're paying to go and get like bad GCSEs, and I mean, maybe for some parents like the amount doesn't matter, but I think it really does show that there are two sides to like the kind of experience. You can obviously have those people, you pay for that access and then you make the most of that access and you get those contacts and you get the leg up and everything, but you can also pay for that access And if like the child or like the student isn't on board with it, it doesn't necessarily automatically mean you're going to get like a success, or you're going to do well academically, or you're going to get that respect in the industry that you're in. There still has to be an element of effort as well.
Yeah. Do you think there is also, because I didn't go to private school, but like I know I went to university with like a few people who did, and I think one of the things that I really noticed was often there seems to be like sort of confidence and like bounce back ability benefit, and I do think that we see that
With
in
Elle Woods.
Elle Woods. Like it's very hard, she doesn't stay down for long, like it's very hard to knock her confidence. She like and I think we see a few times in the film like she does like show that things have hurt her, but she gets back up again. I wonder, like, do you think that that sometimes can be a bit of like a benefit of having been schooled in that environment?
Yeah, I do think so, because I think there is a bit more of an attitude of like you can do it, and it's a bit more supportive. Whereas I think sometimes, again, at least from my experience of being in like a grammar school, like a state school, then it's a bit more like you've got to figure out how to swim yourself.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit more of like a cushion for you, I think, at private schools, like because I guess there's more of an incentive for like the teachers to kind of prop you up a bit. But I do also think a lot of it comes down to like parenting as well, and like because I think a lot of your confidence in your own abilities is instilled in you by like your home environment as well. And again, like I've seen a lot of examples of people who went to state schools and have done incredibly well as well in terms of like their careers, because they've been encouraged and they've been like supported and kind of told, yes, you can do it, like go for it from like an early age, not just at school but also at home. So I think there's like the two kind of have to work together.
Yeah, 100%. I was just like thinking while you were talking, for a lot of people from like a lower kind of socioeconomic background, there's jeopardy involved.
Yes.
So if you don't do well, you can't like climb the ladder, kind of earn yourself some money and sort of like buy a good life for yourself, I suppose. Whereas I think at the start of this film, the assumption seems to be that like Elle and all of her friends, you know, she's like a design major, I think, at UCLA. It feels as though really the trajectory is that you like are a sorority girl, you go get your degree and you make yourself like look really nice, and then you find like a great, like a really rich husband who and there's not like the jeopardy of you're not necessarily maybe going to have to go out into the world and earn your own money. So I suppose like there's a confidence benefit.
She's like not afraid to try.
Exactly. But I do wonder like what would Elle Woods' life have looked like if Warner had proposed instead of dumping her? Like, do we think she would have ever gone out into the world and like made her own money?
No.
Even though we see like she has the potential and she's so smart.
Yeah, maybe not. And actually, I wonder if that again happens like in reality in a lot of these situations where your focus has been, or like you're kind of encouraged to focus on that like relationship and like marrying into like the wealthy family, if actually like a lot of your own talent can just get put aside.
Yeah, 100%. Well, she does go to law school. She does become incredibly like successful. She really proves her place. Obviously she works really hard, and I think that's what we see. It's not just that we see that she does really well because she's decided to be bothered to use her incredible intelligence. Obviously she has like the raw intelligence there, but you see her, she's like on her treadmill with her study book with like, does her dog have his own treadmill?
I think so.
He does.
Yeah.
And all of those like scenes and the montages, she's always combining like the hard work with study with all of the other like bells and whistles, like the beauty stuff, like the mask or the like going on the treadmill. Like she never compromises on like that aesthetic.
No.
You know, we see her trying to be a bit more serious. Like the first lecture she shows up to, she's in that blue suit with the like glasses and her hair all like scraped back and her big fluffy pen. But yeah, we don't ever see her that she has to like compromise on that. But what we do see is that, you know, the film actually, for like a really light-hearted, like fun film, it does have this kind of like slightly darker undercurrent of the fact that, you know, she thinks that she's been chosen to intern on this case, which is like, you know, one of the lecturers who's also got his own law practice only selects like the very best students to come and be his interns, and she thinks that she's been chosen on merit, when in actual fact the lawyer is like a massive perv and likes the look of her, and at one point like puts his hand on her leg and makes a pass at her.
Do you feel like this kind of particular storyline almost kind of, in a way, I feel like it almost undermines the message that like the rest of the film is giving us about like the fact that you can, you know, be really great at, you know, your job or your studies, like you can be really switched on and still be really feminine, like, because it's basically again like kind of saying, well, that's not actually the reason that she gets chosen. And I just I know that like there's a reason why they put these plot lines in, but I do feel a little bit like, has it kind of like undone itself a bit by putting that in?
Yeah, I think I do. I think that's a really good question to ask. I suppose like if it weren't for the fact that she then gets like her big victory of the show, like on her own merit, like she really proves her place there in some ways. It doesn't matter how she was selected. But what I think it potentially does is like add a little bit of reality and a bit of realism into the movie, in terms of like, you know, one of the things that women do have to face in the workplace is this idea that maybe there might be like a transaction in place where like, I'll give you what you want if you give me what I want, which is so icky. I don't know. Do you think that still happens in these kinds of environments? I'd be tempted to say yes.
Yeah, I think that it probably happens like way more as well still than we know about. And it's one of those things that I think, however much we try to talk about it, we try to like dismantle it, I don't really think it will go away. And I mean, there's been a lot of like coverage about changes that are happening to non-disclosure agreements. Pregnant and Screwed have talked about it a lot, and the fact that they're going to change like how they can be used. Progress is great, but I don't think it's the end of the issue for a second. And I also think there's a really interesting point here, which is that actually I understand why there's a lot of campaigning to get rid of like the ability to sign an NDA and then not be able to talk about your experience. But for a lot of women, I actually think in this situation, like, is it not fair that some of them might actually want to just sign, like take the money and forget about it? Whereas actually companies aren't going to offer to pay you if you can't, like, if you're not allowed to talk about it.
That's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about it that way, because there have been like a lot of situations in which like, or I've thought about it a few times where, you know, obviously not to like diminish it at all, because it's still like wrong and really uncomfortable, but the incident that happens in Legally Blonde is like on the scale of abuses of power that do happen in the workplace, often like 99% of the time from men toward like older men towards younger women, that the incident that happens is like relatively minor. Like it's horrible, but it's not like I wouldn't probably go as far as to call it an assault, even though it is definitely unwanted contact.
Yeah.
And it might be that for something like that, where it's a horrible thing to happen to you, but you probably could move on from it relatively quickly. And we see that Elle does, that maybe actually rather than pursuing justice against the person who did it to you, the better outcome for you in order to move on might be to like sign something and, you know, and get on with your life.
Yeah. I think there's definitely like two sides to every scenario with this type of thing. And I think, you know, there should be the choice, but I think taking away that choice, which again, I'm sure a lot of like the campaigns will say that they're not doing, but the reality is if you're a company, why would you pay somebody like 50 grand if there's no guarantee that they're going to be quiet about it? Like you're just not going to offer them that option. So
yeah,
it's a really tricky one.
It is
I think.
a really tricky one.
And it's so dependent on everybody's individual circumstances. And like you say, like what actually happened in the scenario, which you can't preempt. But I do think that kind of like this shows as well, like horrible things can happen, but you can choose to move on and bounce back from them, as Elle does. But like, yeah, you can't kind of have a one size fits all approach, I don't think.
It's just then another like factor that women have to consider in the workplace, like that really young men, I don't think this ever probably crosses their mind. Like, what would I do in that scenario? Or, you know, and there's also, I think, like crucially, the fact that as the like unwanted contact, the like hand on the thigh is happening, Warner's new girlfriend, who is played by Selma Blair, who we have not mentioned yet, but who is great, and she like starts as this very like cold, unfriendly, like she hates everything that Elle represents. She's kind of dresses like, you know, like she's already someone's kind of wife and mother, like very prim and proper with like the pearls and everything, and is very like serious and studious. And they have just started to kind of become friends, I think, like friendlier with each other. And she's walking past the room, obviously, as this happens, and she jumps to the wrong conclusions. She also thinks that Elle has got onto the like internship not on her own merit, just based on like making promises or flirting or whatever. And I do think that also happens in reality, and I think it's quite like an internalized misogyny thing.
That like women underestimate other women's like, I guess, climb to wherever they are.
Yeah, and like there is the whole like, it's still a real trope of like someone having slept their way to the top, and I never see that accusation leveled at a man. It's always at a woman, and it's usually like by another woman.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Actually, it is, isn't it? It's often like other women that I guess are critical or judgmental of other women.
100%. I think it's a really interesting like study of how much it can cost you to be like underestimated because of the way that you look, but also how complex that is in terms of other people's perceptions that you might have actually got ahead because of the way you look, but it actually has held you back. It's really, really interesting.
I think as well, what I find so like fascinating about the whole discussion around looks is that it really can be quite circular. There are two sides to it, because if you don't look presentable, you don't look, inverted commas, good enough, there's a problem and there's a backlash and you're on the back foot. But then if you look too feminine or you look too girly, that also puts you back. So like it's almost like women are expected to find this perfect in-between balance. And I mean, we've not even discussed like all of the issues of like age and like looking like not looking like a child, but like not looking old, because you can't look old, because if you look too old, then you're definitely like going to be discounted. And you need to be like good enough looking, but you don't want to be too good looking because you don't want to attract the wrong attention. And do you know what, actually, this reminds me of, again, I always reference Shameless because, as you can probably tell, I listen to Shameless a lot. But, and this might be controversial, but this is not me, this is me just quoting them. They said in a recent episode, they were talking about catcalling, and they said, so the two hosts said that they know it was going to be controversial, but they actually like don't mind a catcall if it's like not really sleazy, because they're in their mid-30s, they're married, one's a mum, and like they said, like, sometimes it's just quite nice to like be reminded that you're not like totally past it.
Yeah,
and,
or like invisible.
Yeah. And there's so much narrative about like, do not speak to women, unwanted, like no unwanted conversation, don't shout at me in the and they were just like, I'm going to put it out there, like, actually sometimes it makes me feel quite good. And I was like, fair play for saying it out there, because you're going to probably get a lot of people coming at you for this. But I kind of get their point. Like, there is this supposedly like perfect middle ground that like we're meant to fit into to like tick all of society's boxes. But where is it?
Yeah, I mean, we're basically saying that like you absolutely cannot win, and women are always held to impossible standards. Like,
but by
like,
men and women, like it's not like,
like, don't be invisible, but don't be too visible. Don't be unattractive, but don't be too attractive. Don't be hyper masculine because we'll think you're trying too hard, but don't be too feminine either.
Don't look too young that it's like weird, but like don't look too old because aging is gross. Like,
it's I don't know, but I think it's a really like interesting study of all of those dynamics if you choose to watch it through that lens. Also, you can just watch it because it's a super fun film. And we haven't even mentioned Jennifer Coolidge, who is the best character in it. But unfortunately, she doesn't have very much to do with the kind of inner workings of the plot. She's just like a very, very fun addition. And that's about all we've got time for. We've got to wrap up. So, tell us what you think. Do you love Legally Blonde? Did you notice any of these like themes when you were watching it? And come give us a follow wherever you get your podcasts, and find us on socials at Show Me the Money Official. Thanks.
Bye.